Welcome. It's so good to see you, and the spaces between us are like the spaces in the poem, right? Poetry is that stuff that one of my students once told me when I asked him to describe poetry. He says, "Oh, it's that stuff in books that doesn't quite reach the margins." So in COVID time, we're distanced and we have spaces, and you look like a poem. So I'm Carole Martignacco, and I am very happily launching this book, A Bowl of Orange Suns. And I'll read to you a few poems from the book, and then I have a few introductions to make. I hope you're all right with this being recorded, because we will upload it to YouTube, and it'll be available for others who couldn't be here. Quite a few that weren't able to make it. So I think whenever I tell people what the title of the book is, they always say, "Well, what does that mean? Where does that come from?" So I'll read the title poem in the book. The book is so new that, I don't have the page numbers memorized. Okay, so here's A Bowl of Orange Suns. For grandson Asher at 15 months. "Son," he proclaims from his perch on my lap, and jabs a stubby brown index finger insistently. "Son, son, son," he chants. But I am deep in conversation with his mother and fail to respond. "Son," up close he shoves it cool against my cheek, barely able to balance its weight in his palm. Then I recall how yesterday, as I pushed his stroller round the lake path in early evening, he pointed to that orange ball hanging low among the trees, and I had named it for him. "Son," he tries again, shoving it firmly into my hand. "Son, yes, I agree. This one's an orange sun." We make up a song to sing its name. Years from now, we may be sitting at this same round wooden table discussing metaphor. Today, we play catch the sun, juggle, and nearly drop before returning the bright globe to the blue bowl in the center, to rest among a whole pile of other suns, those spheres of light we feast upon. And so, I want to say, the beautiful image on the front of the book is an original watercolor from Dennis Palmer, who, when I sent him that poem, this is what he gave us back. Thank you, Dennis. I wish you could be here. This group of poems, there's 75 poems, one for each year I've been on the planet. And it's been important for me to get this work out because I've always been a writer. I think, it's somewhere in the book I say that I started my love of language making up songs and stories on the backyard swing at a very early age, and they couldn't shut me up, right? I just went on and on. I'd start extrapolating and expounding, and I would just keep on. And the story from my parents is that I was late talking. They were worried about me. They thought, "What's wrong? She should be saying words, and then maybe phrases." And they thought, "Well, she's not delayed in any other way." One day, my mother opened the door to the bedroom, and I was in my crib singing songs. Who knew, right? And so we never quite know. But it began that early. So here's an early memory. It's the first poem in the book, and it's called Abalone, for this shadow. Abalone begins in a barefoot dance out the door the summer I was 5. Soles of the feet awakened by cold early morning dew. Flattening tracks in the iridescent grass all the way to the garden. To check on the purple and yellow iris I'd waited for days to unfold. Stepping into the slippery soil, I stubbed my toe on the shell, bent down to scoop it up where it lay among shiny stones. And all the night's rain pooled in the watery curve, spilled through a neat line of holes along the outer arc. A stream of water washing my feet caught violet, grass green, white blue of clouded sky. Yet inside the shell, in wavy lines, all the colors of rain remained. And I thought, how perfect a world this is to live in. How perfect a world. Coming here, I'm sure you had that sense. What a beautiful world to be alive in this season of color. Well, I could tell you that my love for oranges wasn't always so passionate. I grew up in a very small, crowded household. We were poor, but we didn't know that. You know, we didn't think we were poor. We were rich in all kinds of good things. But this poem talks about the kind of the shadow side of my romance with orange. It's called Color Coded, and it's a bit about my family of origin. My elder brother was blue. The closest sister after me had rose. The fourth, a boy, was given green. Yet another brother, yellow. And the next sister got lavender. The seventh and youngest, so far down the line, she got to choose anything the older ones outgrew. Later in art class, it would make perfect sense I'd end up orange. Blue being first as my mother's favorite, we were each assigned as we arrived in a pattern of direct opposites around the color wheel, spanning the spectrum, though as siblings go, not always complementary. I imagine her paging one day through the thick Sears Roebuck catalog, coming upon the ad for a whole set of steel tumblers in rainbow colors. A sturdy 6 would be enough to carry us all past the spill at every meal stage. Easier to set the table and keep in check the daily sharing of germs. It must have been overwhelming in that tiny country house, each berth crowding us all further into the corners, for then she went the whole route. Matching metal bowls, melamine plates, towels and washcloths, coverlets for the beds, toothbrushes, and personal items unthinkable to share. Towels and even metal cups and bowls faded over time, yet I recall how from early on I felt locked in and color-coded, wishing to be anything but washed out orange. Till I discovered Matisse and the outrageous Fauvists, Rothko's bold color field paintings, and read what orange had to say to all the other colors, by which time I'd learned to embrace with passion the very thing I'd hated from the start. So life is kind of like that, isn't it? You know, we learn to make our peace with certain things, and that definitely is true of the color orange. It goes on as a theme. I have to explain that I discovered that orange was a passion to develop in a class at Hill City in Minnesota. The University of Minnesota at that time used to do classes up north You were always going up north for something, and studying the arts. They had started an arts center. Robert Bly was often part of our classes, Michael Dennis Brown, Bill Holmes, several of the people I mentioned in the book. And one day there was a visiting poet who was sitting right in front of a massive wall of windows, facing west, and it was right at sunset before supper was served. And the class was ending, and he was saying how we must learn to embrace what we struggle with and dance with it, like Jacob in the angel, right? And until it blesses us. And while he was saying that, he said, so choose anything. It could be just a simple everyday thing. And as he's talking, the sun is setting in brilliant colors in the background. I said, oh, well, maybe for me it's orange. So then the romance began, right? I'll read a poem that doesn't have anything to do with orange. But then, of course, there's orange, and then there's everything that isn't. So they are related. Language lesson for Toshio. I think this is one of my editor's favorites. Sipping tea as I lift my cup, light catches the rim. In its flash, I'm back at the university, sitting in the hospital cafeteria just before closing, glasses and dishes clanking as they are cleared. We meet for our weekly lesson. I, the language tutor, you, the visiting cardiologist from Kyoto, who longs to think in English. To begin, I ask, tell me, Toshio, what in Japanese culture do you most miss so far from home? You stretch the silence and sigh, but before I can reframe the question, slowly lift the shape from the table as if it were some prehistoric vessel newly unearthed, or a priceless piece of original art. Cupness, you whisper, pulling the word up from somewhere deep underground. Cupness, you repeat, twirling it with slim fingers to study its shape and shine. This one you hold from the standard food service supply is heavy white porcelain, curving inward at the top, designed, I know as a potter, to discourage dribbles down the side. Handle solid, thick, except for a playful flip where it joins the rim of the bowl. Unthinkable, you say. Such a thing could be disposable. As we turn together to observe two students nearby chatting over coffee in styrofoam. So timeless, you say, this idea of cup. Struggling still for words, the beauty of being, hollowed out to hold itself open, emptiness waiting to be filled. Less a thing than essence, the same with plate, bench, table, usefulness inseparable from design, shapes polished by being used. You lower the cup then, bring your hands together, tell of the birthday party for your son at preschool, matching paper cups, plates, napkins, plastic forks and spoons, all gathered hastily up and wrapped in paper tablecloth, dumped with one gesture into the bin. As if the pleasure of eating were a task to complete quickly before moving on to whatever's next. Strange, you frown. We do not know. We do not have this passion for throw it away. Your speech by now flows easily. You've forgotten to watch your mental footing crossing the bridge between thought and language. Tell me more, I prompt. Let's explore. this beingness of things. Afterward, I bow my thanks, wave away your fee, knowing I will keep this lesson a lifetime. Later that night at the sink, washing up, hands cupped to raise cold water to my face, my own wet fingers flash and gleam like porcelain in the light above the mirror. Now, decades later, Toshio, I want to say, most days I remember to touch lightly with wonder these timeless tools of every day. The warm shape now cupped between my hands, the dark liquid catching overhead lights, how it all shines. I have these wonderful cellists here, and there's a poem about the cello that I'm going to share. Yeah, here it is. And then we'll hear from them. So there are other passions, right? And cello is one of them. In 5th grade, I knew nothing about music except how it sounds. My dream was to march in a smart, brass-buttoned red uniform and white tasseled boots, stiffly carrying aloft a gleaming spiral horn. The choice was band or orchestra, and the band was already full. That day, I rushed into the music room certain any stringed instrument was a violin, because Sundays at home after dinner, Mother would play whole stacks of Mantovani 45s on the RCA Victrola, Tales of the Vienna Woods, the Blue Danube Waltz, Hunter's Life, the violins so many and so high they were all an untrained ear could hear above the other nameless voices. Even being afraid of heights, I'd try the violin, till Mr. Cavendish, the conductor, said we needed a cello. We only had one other, and I looked up to find, red-haired, math whiz Cecil Van Dryson, the only boy I ever loved in grade school, cradling between his skinny blue jean knees a huge violin, the color of maple syrup, also a favorite. And I noticed how all his freckles were the color of the wood. I would have said yes already, but did I know how a cello sounds, Cavendish asked. Such a lovely mellow tone, you play it like this. He tightened the screw on Cecil's bow, drew it in long strokes across the rosin cake, sat down head back and gave us Danny Boy, Grandfather's Clock, what I later never learned, a Bach sarabande, and time stopped. The cello rocked back and forth, his hand swept swiftly up and down the fingerboard in a wild dance. The bow dipped in and out, long and low. The cello face flashed in the light, while buzzing strings spun out a brightness of autumn leaves. I remembered crawling inside the carved mahogany armoire in my great-aunt's attic, and saw the deep Mississippi flowing, and I knew here was a sound I could learn to live with, practice, love, sounding just like the rocks my father polished looked, with all the earth colors alive and singing in warm layered lines. So for the next 4 years, I shared a music stand with Cecil, rehearsing even at times a newfound love for math. never got to play that well. Because as I was showing Catherine and her friend Suzanne, my fingers never grew long enough to play the full-size cello. And when I was in grade school, I was borrowing a three-quarter-size cello from the school district, and when I had to go from middle school to high school, I couldn't take my cello with me. So Mr. Cavendish said, "No problem, you can play the violin." It never worked. The tone of the violin is totally different. You brace it in your chin, and the vibration in my ear was just too much, and so I switched voice. And so that's a whole other story. I'm going to read one more poem, and then we'll stop for a minute and do something else, and I'll close with a few more poems. And then we have some wonderful orange-flavored treats that I'm going to... Angela has orchestrated this, the treats at the end, and we'll invite you to choose a few treats and take them out and maybe socialize outdoors where it's more, should we say, COVID legal. This one is about North Hatley. And again, you'll see the orange motif here. It's also the poem that I have made copies of, and I leave, yes, pick up a copy of the poem as you leave, and I'll be happy to sign it for you if you want. So this is called Mirage, North Hatley. I think the year was 2008, although I didn't record it, it just feels like that was right. An ordinary overcast March morning in this tiny remote village, almost a Shangri-La. I shoulder my hemp bag of citrus, tea biscuits, scallions, and 2 versions of the local news. Cross the footbridge between Grey Lake and Charcoal River as 2 young monks approach from the other side. We smile, one nods his shaved head, as the other inscribes great circles in the air with his palms open. Bright persimmon robes flap, balloon, ripple in the wind, making a kind of music I see more than hear. A bell rings, they slip through the door of the dépanneur, and pigeons fly up. Wait, are you real? Mirage for the soul thirsty? Apparition out of the vast unknown? Climbing the hill, inside this brush painting, each step a measured breath. In, out, I glance back, rehearsing the only haiku by Basho I know by heart. Day returns to gray, and the river gushes swiftly on. Home again, I find no mention of a meditation conference in the news. That really happened. I still don't know where they came from or why they were there. So I would like to take this moment to acknowledge some of the people that have helped create this project. And I want to tell you that the poems were always scribbled on the backs of envelopes and stuffed into books of other poets, right? And scraps of paper, you know. They come from, some of them are quite old, decades old in fact, and they go back to raising my children, you know, early lovers, jobs I had that didn't make sense necessarily for me, and all kinds of things that one processes through writing. So most of the writing that I've done all my life has kind of been siphoned into writing curricula or lesson plans, and sermons, newspaper columns, that kind of thing. So I've never published a collection of poetry, although I've done it since I was a teenager. But Angela, appears on the scene in North Hatley and the Townships, and she says, "Oh, well, when are you going to publish your poems?" Oh. And then she buys Shoreline Press, and that is the reason why this book is a reality. With the most gracious, encouraging harassment, she has helped me put this together. So Angela, I would like to invite you up to just say a word or two about your vision for Shoreline Press and what it means to the writers in this local area. First, I'd like to say that it's so wonderful to be back in this space. Thanks to Carole and also Rachel, you organized a spring reading festival. We had a lot of writers come from different places. We also had the D.G. Jones Memorial here. We had some wonderful, wonderful literary events here. So it's so nice to have this space back again and to be in it and share it in that way. And Carole mentioned that I knew of her poetry, and I knew of her poetry because I think largely at your behest we had a writing group here in the basement, and Carole was saying, "Oh, it reminds me of the Loft in Minnesota." So we had all ideas of having this as a center of literary activity and poetry and stuff like that. And we came to our writing groups and we did our writing, and Steve, my husband, was sort of calling this a manuscript completion workshop, because a lot of us write, but we never get published. So what's the difference? What makes our poems that we just write and share into books? So we were working on that largely to put together manuscripts, and we did that, and we didn't get published. So what does make a book? Well, it was a call from Judy Isherwood saying, I'm 85, or maybe it's a little bit too much to keep publishing in the middle of a pandemic as well. So kind of implied, would you like the press? So I said, okay. Not knowing what I was getting myself in for. So here we are. And while I was at those writing workshops, I loved Carole's work. And I kept saying that to you, Carole. I love your work. And I wasn't just saying it, I meant it. So anyway, and I always had in my mind, if I ever was in a position to publish your work, I would do it. Well, be careful what you think, because here I was, I hit a press, so okay, it's time to publish a number of people who I really admire their work. And Carole is certainly one of them. So anyway, we did that, I approached Carole, can we do a book? And then, because I have a lot of wonderful interns, I said, who shall I pair Carole up with? And the perfect intern came. Mm-hmm. So that helped a lot. And we also, not only have great writers in the townships, but we have a wonderful amount of artists. So Dennis Palmer is here. And I said, Carole, you need something really special on your cover. So we asked Dennis Palmer. And Dennis Palmer said, I don't do still lifes. But Judy said, Angela's doing a lot of work. Go and do a still life, whether you like it or not. So thanks to Judy, who prodded Dennis to do it. But Dennis said, I don't like still lifes, but did you see how the light fell on that orange slice? He got into the orange slices, and he did a great, magnificent job with the orange slices. So it's a beautiful book. It absolutely is wonderful poetry, put together with love and a lot of affection and hard work, and the great work of Dennis Palmer. So this is actually my first poetry book. I've published Anne Hill's book, which was inspired by your workshop, Heather, at the library. So again, when I read Anne Hill's, we're going to publish this book. Okay, tick that one off the list. We did that one. And then Josh Quirian, we did that book, and that was a novella and short stories. So this is my first poetry book, and I'm really excited about that because I'm a poet at heart, and my husband is too. So it's actually the first of quite a few poetry books that are coming up.
in the near future. We have 2 memoirs coming up. We have a children's book coming up, a hardcover, beautifully done children's book. And what else do we have? It's 2 memoirs. And I think that's it coming up for now. So anyway, oh yes! Short stories, another collection of short stories. I've got so many I can't keep the track. So we've got a wonderful collection, a new collection of short stories coming out. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, John. So anyway, in fact, 10 books are currently in production at Shoreline, and it's because there's so many talented people. It's also because there hasn't been a press. So people have been writing sometimes for decades. So it's time. They're coming out in a big but. So this is really the first, the poetry, of which I think we have 5 this year. So anyway, that's pretty exciting. And just to tell you a little bit about next year, I figure after this pandemic is over, we all want a good laugh, so we're going to go Shoreline humor. So we have a number of collections of Shoreline humor. So if you have humorous pieces, send them to me. So we'll get those out. Okay, so that's basically it. Shoreline, when it was in Montreal, was basically a press that Judy started to help people get published. I mean, even in a city, it's hard to get published. So it was like, okay, if I help people get their first book published, then they can go on to a bigger press and say, look, I've had this book published, and sort of get into the whole thing. Here again, I'm doing that, but I'm just focusing on the townships. I'm really interested in writing by people in the townships and about the townships. So that's what you'll be seeing coming out. And is that all I want to say? I think so.
But don't go away. Don't go away, because one of her brilliant ideas was to connect with bishops, right?
Right.
And to invite students who are interested in learning the publishing, writing industry. And therefore, I would like to invite Locke to come forward. And Locke was my intern, editor, and he made the whole process, which is nitpicky and nitty-gritty, right? I mean, there's all kinds of little details that he took charge of and masterfully managed the phases of this book from, well, I didn't quite send him the scraps of paper in the envelopes, but it was almost like that. It was like starting from that. So, with Angela here, I would like to make a slight presentation. And I've never done the work of the editor. I just have done the work of the poet. But I have a deeper appreciation of its value because of your work. And I thank you for your enthusiasm and your graciousness. Whenever another error would appear, you were always, okay, let's deal with it. So I would like to present with you, Angela and I would both like to present the Golden Fine-Tooth Comb Award. I have to say it's a much coveted award, like the Juno, right, or the Emmy. Presented to Locke Bailey, outstanding editorial achievement for the project A Bowl of Orange Suns.
Wow, thank you.
And here is something you can sign and put on your wall.
Thank you. Wow. Thanks, everybody.
It's played in gold.
Yeah.
It is really well. 24-karat gold paint.
That's incredible. Okay, I'm going to put this down.
Okay. Locke is going to read.
Before I let you read, I just remembered I had 3 things to say. So one more thing I wanted is publishing during COVID. How could I forget? Yeah. Okay, so I took over Shoreline in the midst of COVID, and we couldn't have events like this. So this is so exciting to be back and having an actual audience where the audience gets to meet the writer rather than Zoom. So it's great. Thank you so much for coming. The other thing about COVID is that it's had an impact on the printing industry. And my printer has had shortages, even now, of important things that they need for printing and for their machines and stuff like that. So as a consequence, the printer is taking a lot longer to produce books. So what's happened is that we have print copies, test copies here that we have today, but we don't actually have the book ready for purchase. However, anyone who wants to buy the book, sign up in the book in the front, and I will deliver to you personally when the book comes. The first 75 people, I will deliver to your home when the book comes. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to say. And let's hope this is the end of COVID.
Yeah, well,
okay.
Yeah. So, hello everybody.
he's
Yeah.
a poet too, by the way.
Yeah. Can you all hear me okay? It's okay? All right. So yeah, it's gonna be hard to follow up after Angela and Carole. I'm not much of a speaker. However, I am a teacher like Carole. But yeah, this has been an amazing 6 months, really transformative 6 months for me. I finished at Bishop's back in around June, but this email came in from Bishop's University that said, we're looking for around 10, 15 people to do an internship in the townships in publishing. And I said, oh, that's what I want to do. So I reached out to Angela and she said, oh, of course you can be part of this. So I was with her for a few weeks and then I was partnered with Carole for this project and now we have a book. So this has been, I don't know, the last 6 months have been really, really incredible for kind of jump-starting my career in publishing. And I hope to continue working on projects and, you know, kind of existing in the literary world of Quebec. It's been really great. So Carole has very kindly decided to share the stage with me today. She's asked me to speak a little bit kind of about the project like I just did, and then read some of my own work, since I'm also a poet, which is, you know, equally exciting to work on a poetry book as a poet. That was really important to me to kind of work on something that I'm really passionate about. So I'll be reading a few of my own poems, but again, I thank Carole and Angela both for giving me this opportunity, and thank you all for being here today to celebrate the Bull of Orange Suns. So, all right, I'll be reading just 4 poems, as per Carole's request. This first one doesn't really need an introduction, but I might say a few things about the other ones, but this one is called Panic Attack. Beneath my feet felt the grass like late summer blossoming. It birthed itself in my brain. And there were black flies swarming overhead, weaving irreversible lines in the air. My hands floated away when I tried to untie them, then the dog barked and I couldn't breathe. But running across the lawn, to the fence, to the noise, not once was the dog in danger. What's that? The second one is the longest one I'll read. It's 1 full page. But this one is important to me. It's about leaving home. For those of you who don't know me, because most of you, I was born and raised in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I moved to Quebec back in 2017 to go to Bishop's and to improve my French. And I decided that this is home. I decided to stay here, and I'm very, very grateful for that decision, for deciding to come here. So this is about leaving home, kind of finding a new home. It's called Antediluvian. 1. Bury our clothes by the garden. Meet me outside in the dark. Isn't Thursday, so we're unlike ourselves, lying under cherry trees, sucking fruit pits till numb tongues, spitting stones over shoulders to see how far they will go. And they will go, won't they? Go, go, spit stones, babble badly till the edge. Where is that? Tell me it's not a drop-off, not a border, not an end. Tell me I don't want to leave here tomorrow. Tells me we're already tempted. 2. It's a miracle we didn't fall sooner. In the leaving, I thought of how green it was, all the trees and all their animals and how we named them, just to forget. In what world was this okay? Outside the garden, we went up a mountain, looking for that perfect place. And all the way up, you asked about God, and I knew it was bad, but so far behind us. At the top, hazy strangers, me perched on the ridge. In the distance, I saw a great rain. And I pointed with one arm. and with the other reached back for you, but gone somewhere else, you said, swim. This third one is kind of about that moment when you find that person, that special person in your life, whether that's a romantic partner, maybe a best friend, somebody unexpected that kind of comes into your life, and you start kind of opening up like a flower, kind of getting to know them and opening up. It's called The End of April. In a tree tunnel, driving under the leaves, I told you about the years that led me to you. A winter so bad that every tree turned to ice. The dragonfly slept through the storm in a ring box, and I didn't go to school for weeks. Drinking in Copenhagen, every light looked familiar, a bonfire in a baseball field, a flashlight with every color, a sun snuffed out again and again. Drive-ins and drive-thrus, driveways and bodies of water, but I never went swimming. Piano lessons, salt and snow, dogwood berries crushed underfoot. These words, corn silk, falling between us as I undid myself like a forest of ginkgos. Now this last one, I think everybody will be able to relate to. It was recently published in the anthology Hope and Resilience in the Time of COVID-19, published by the Bishop's Lifelong Learning Academy. It's available now as in ebook form and a physical form on Amazon. So I wrote this kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's about that moment when you're kind of walking outside, there's not much else to do. You're walking around, you haven't seen many people in a while, and you kind of look out at nature and say, everything at home has changed, everything kind of public has changed, but when you look at nature, it's kind of stayed the same. So it's kind of about that. It's called This Moment. If this is a lesson, then what is it teaching us? To climb inside our bodies a year and ask if it's always been quiet. To tread more lightly, lest we disturb what was somehow untouched by ruin. To see a fish growing from a branch like a flower and saying yes, and this too, why not? That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. And I'm so glad he's going into publishing. I'm just going to check the time here. We have time for a few more poems, I think. Are we okay? We don't want to lose you. But, let's see. Not everything is juicy and delicious about orange, right? I mean, everyone knows about Agent Orange. When we were above, or when we were on our way here, I think we must have passed, David, maybe tens of thousands of orange and white striped cones, that line the street and signs that say travaux, 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 fin. But so not everything about orange is positive. This is one about hearing about the Indigenous children found in unmarked graves. And there's a lot to say politically, but I think each one of us has experienced it viscerally when we heard that news. 1. I was folding clothes when the unthinkable truth we somehow already knew was spoken. All at once my arms, unable to move, grew heavy with the weight of holding my own children. My eldest hears the news and calls. We mourn together. She who is childless would have loved any one of them as her own. How do we carry these missing thousands close to heart? 2. After seeing the class photographs, dark heads with shorn black hair looking up from rows of wooden desks, their gaunt faces haunt me. In my sleep, I am their teacher, but as I stand before them, their eyes hold no more fear. They are already looking through me. 3. Outside on the church lawn for the Canada Day Memorial, I place on the folding table altar near small sheepskin slip-ons, beaded ballet slippers, and red rain boots, a pair of yellow sneakers with white laces. Beside me, a young expectant mother bounces a squirming toddler on her hip as she adds an infant's blue moccasins. We nod and join the queue to be smudged and blessed before entering to find our seats in alternating rows among a sea of orange shirts. Baskets of bright ribbons are passed. We rise to sing, O Canada, our home and native land. I lose my voice on the first stanza and cannot find it to sing the closing anthem, Jesus Loves Me. 4. Give the numbers names, I pray. These bones, rising now out of the lap of earth, will live again if only in our awareness. Before ever we think of begging forgiveness, restoring honor to these lost children with clean air, land, and water to all their relations. 5. At night I run, waving after them, through woods, over frozen snow, wading streams and tall grasses, across open farm fields. I keep calling, wait, come back, forgive us, we are better now. We know we were horribly wrong. If I could, I would tell you, you are beautiful, each of you wanted, loved from time's beginning, each a never-to-be-repeated miracle of being. Our world will forever be impoverished, not knowing the gift of who you were or might have been. You are the very ones we needed to find. Is Adele here? No, she isn't. She didn't make it. But anyway, this is a fun one. Again, the shadow side of orange, right? It's called "This Orange is Illegal," and I've dedicated it to Adele Engstrom because Adele and I were on our way to the conference, and she was driving at the time. Crossing the border at Plattsburgh and en route to the United Nations conference, both of us hungry, open lunch kit in my lap, sandwiches unwrapped, ready to share with the driver. We pull up to the gates, papers are checked, a customs officer reaches through the passenger window. The hand at the end of his uniformed arm points and waits not too patiently for my orange, recently shipped across the same border into Canada, still stamped in blue by the Grove in California. This orange without passport, demanded for crossing the line in human hands, is blissfully unaware. Blissfully unaware it is illegal. Could be at home anywhere in the world and will surely taste the same on either side. I surrender it with a blessing as we cross the inexplicable divide. Okay, I'm going to end this.
'Little celebration with,
You like humor, huh? Okay. So here's one about being 75, right? And you're still learning. I'm still a neophyte in this world. And this is one to prove it. It's called Clocking Time. Dedicated to Dr. Carmen. Oh, Adele, we just missed it. Okay. I'll give her a private reading. So this is for Dr. Carmen, who, well, you'll see what she does. It seems I've arrived not far from where I started today at age 75 for the old people's mental exam. The doctor hands me a sheet of blank printed paper. Draw me a clock and show me that it's 2. She leaves the room and me to sit and ponder. Is this one of those tricks, like back in first grade? She didn't actually specify digital or analog. If I draw a clock face, will that date me? Back then at St. Stephen's, we used to sit in a cozy semicircle in the alcove under the windows for reading and art, and learn to tell time with a huge cardboard clock. One day, Sister Carmen pulled me out of the queue as others filed by for recess. Just give me the words you see on the page. Please, no more stories about the stories. Another day, it was the same drawing the apples. Carole, can you give me 1 apple and nothing more? Her smile was more a scowl. I didn't ask for worms. So it seems I've struggled with this issue all my life. And what if that's part of this test? Did I ever learn? In the end, I forego the twin bells on the retro alarm in my study, or classic Roman numerals, which would surely emphasize my age. After all, who studies Latin anymore? I decide against my favorite retirement version. White, totally blank, with no hands, and all the numbers out of order in a heap at the bottom, looking like stars fallen from heaven down to earth. Stop thinking, I scold myself. Time's running out. So I'm drawing the plainest clock I can. Straight, no frills or extras, though my fingers itch to do otherwise. And it seems I've arrived not far from where I started, only a bit more aware how easily I could still fail this test. So, that was the penultimate poem. I'll end with a theological statement, right? Because you expect me to do that. This is called Belief in the Afterlife. And believe it or not, it's one I wrote way, way back in time. But curiously, when I get to the end of my life, I still believe it. I believe what I said here. Belief in the afterlife need not be limited to humans. When it reaches the highest chakra, an orange becomes the sun, evaporates, is taken up into the source from which it emerged out of the vast no-time when the universe was itself an immense fiery orange. In death it may outclass its humbler origins, come back as Grand Marnier or Cointreau, posthumously promoted to a spirited rich aristocrat with a French title. Oranges in spring may rise out of the earth as daylilies, recognized in this disguise only by those who have themselves learned how to flower. So, does anybody have any questions? No, you can't possibly have any questions after all, right?
Did you pass the clock test?
I did pass it, yeah. Because I was very careful. I did the Arabic numerals and everything, and nothing fancy. Well, I did an extra circle around and anyway. So now it's just pick up a postcard, pick up a poem. There's some broadsheets with some colored sheets with the North Hatley poem on it. If you want me to sign your postcard, if you want to order a book, that'd be great. There's a book with lined paper. You can add your name to it. And as Angela said, we'll make sure you get them. And thank you so much for celebrating this big event in my life with me.
Thanks for doing that, Carol. I was thinking of that myself.
And your musicians.
Oh. Thank you.
And we're going to get Carol out of here with "What a Wonderful World."
Oh, I love that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for asking us. You don't have to sit here, unless you want to. Mozart.
That's Mozart. What is
That's
it?
the Eine kleine Nacht music.
Sorry?
Eine kleine Nacht music. A little night music.
A little, hold on, it's because of my ears, I can't hear you. Boy, I always thought that was Bach, isn't that crazy?
It's called Eine kleine Nacht music.
I need nothing.
That's German for a little night music.
It's a very fancy piece.
Yes. We're going to play the second movement in the middle.
Okay.
You doing okay? Great. Okay.
Well, you know, it's so well known.
Red hair and the red, the bottom glasses. And I love that you still do German and all that stuff. I knew people wouldn't go in the right door. You jump over the chairs and everything looks like.
Yeah,
Well, that's Pete.
here's some Bach, monsieur.